For years, no one dared to speak of it, but one forgotten detail in the archive changed everything. It started quietly, as most of these stories do. A routine check, a file misplaced, a name that didn't quite fit the usual pattern. I remember opening that dusty folder, the brittle pages crackling under my fingertips. The case was labeled only as Operation Red Moon, an alias that sounded almost poetic at first, but beneath the surface, it was a labyrinth of secrets. The story begins in a small city where a young woman vanished without a trace 12 years ago. Her name was Elena Volkova, a mother, a wife, a nurse, unremarkable in her quiet life, until the day she disappeared. I still wonder, was it truly her choice to go silent? Or was she silenced? When I first examined the files, I noticed something odd. No official missing persons report was filed, no witness statements, just a series of shadowy medical records, encrypted and hidden behind layers of bureaucracy. I asked myself, why? What was so dangerous about Elena that her disappearance was buried so deep? Would you have noticed this detail in the file? A faint note, almost illegible, tucked away in the corner, mentioning discrepancies in her medical history. It was a fragment, but it suggested a cover-up. The question gnawed at me. Who was really behind her vanishing? As I dug further, I uncovered the existence of clandestine clinics, operating under the radar, linked to shadow figures within the medical establishment. They provided discreet services, a euphemism for something far darker. Fraudulent billing, ghost patients, unregistered minors, perhaps even more sinister. It was an underground economy fueled by fear and silence. I remember thinking, this can't be just about money. And then I found her husband's name, Sergei Volkova, a man who seemed ordinary yet carried an aura of paranoia. He denied knowing anything about Elena's whereabouts, but his alibi was thin, too thin. I questioned whether he was truly unaware or whether he was part of the game from the beginning. I kept asking questions. Who commanded these shadow clinics? What was Elena involved in? Was she simply a nurse, or was she unwittingly caught in something much larger? The files hinted at cryptocurrency transactions, offshore accounts, and unregistered clinics. Evidence of a covert operation that thrived on secrecy. But here's the thing. Families like Elena's are often the last to know. They trust, they hope, they pretend not to see what's right in front of them. I often wondered, did Elena suspect? Did she try to blow the whistle? Or was she silenced before she could speak? Then came the betrayal. A confidential informant provided a lead, an anonymous tip that Elena was kept alive in a remote hospital under a false identity. But when I reached out, the records had vanished, wiped clean like they never existed. I remember feeling a gnawing doubt. Did I just walk into a trap? Or was this all a game of shadows designed to keep the truth buried? And what about her son? A boy named Mikhail, now grown. He was the key. But he had been kept in the dark, raised to believe his mother was dead. Was this a deliberate act of manipulation or a desperate attempt to protect him from the truth? I questioned whether the boy knew more than he let on. The deeper I delved, the more layers of deception unfolded. Officially, Elena was gone, an unresolved missing person case. Unofficially, I uncovered whispers of her being moved between facilities, her identity altered. The files showed signs of tampering, dates changed, signatures forged. It was as if someone was trying to erase her completely. Did you ever think about the power behind such disappearances? The way families are shattered, trust is betrayed, and the system turns a blind eye. I kept asking myself, what's most suspicious here? The silence, the cover-ups, the untraceable transactions. All signs point to a well-oiled operation that thrived on secrecy. And then I discovered the real betrayal inside the family. Elena's closest confidant, her own sister, had been paid off. She pretended not to know, even as she secretly supplied information. The betrayal cut deeper than any external enemy. It was someone you trusted, someone who knew the secret and chose silence. By now I was certain, this wasn't just about a missing woman. It was about a hidden network, an underground cartel masquerading as a healthcare operation. They exploited family trust, manipulated law enforcement, and concealed their true purpose behind a facade of legitimacy. The operation's codename, Red Moon, was never official, but it was a symbol of the clandestine power they wielded. A symbol of the moon's phases, hidden, changing, always watching. I wondered, what was the ultimate goal? Control, profit, or something darker still? Eventually, the cracks widened. An undercover agent infiltrated one of the shadow clinics. What he uncovered was chilling: records of off-the-books procedures, untraceable payments, and a pattern of disappearances. Elena's name was among the victims, but more troubling was the realization that the entire operation was protected at the highest levels. Betrayals multiplied, informants vanished, witnesses recanted, and the files I relied on disappeared from the archives. I remember feeling the weight of all those lies piling up. We had enough evidence to make arrests, but the system itself was compromised. Who was truly in charge? Who was pulling the strings? And then came the fall. An internal leak, perhaps from someone who finally decided to expose the truth. An anonymous call, a set of documents sent via encrypted channels. The investigation was shut down overnight. The case went cold. Elena's trail went cold, and I was left with nothing but doubts. Now, I sit here, years later, reflecting on what was uncovered. Did Elena escape? Was she silenced? Or did she become a ghost in the system? Her son grew up unaware, a pawn in a much larger game. This is the haunting question. How many others like Elena are out there, hidden behind the curtain of official silence? How many lives have been secretly manipulated, erased, or worse? The truth is buried deep, and I fear it's still waiting to surface. Would you have believed the official story? Or would you have sensed the cracks in the facade from the very beginning? If this had happened in your family, what would you have done? Would you have trusted the system? Or would you have looked deeper? This case was never meant to be leaked. Files like these rarely survive. But if you've listened this far, you're searching for the truth. Subscribe. I'll show you the next case. These files rarely survive to the end. Subscribe while this one is still here. And if you think it's over, think again. I solved more than one case, and this is only the beginning. Subscribe if you're ready for the next, because behind every shadow, there's a story waiting to be uncovered. And some truths are better left hidden. What looks most suspicious to you in this story? Would you have uncovered the signs, or did you already miss the clues? Sometimes, the worst secrets are hiding in plain sight, and this file, like many others, was never meant to be seen. Remember, trust is fragile, and betrayal lurks in the most unexpected places. What if the greatest danger is not what we see, but what we refuse to believe? This is the story I carry inside me. A story of trust betrayed, of family shattered, and of secrets buried deep beneath layers of deception. And I wonder, will it ever truly be over? I often think about the moments I overlooked, the signs I dismissed in the rush to close the case. There's a particular detail that haunts me: an encrypted communication intercepted during the initial investigation, suggesting Elena's disappearance was not random. It hinted at a planned extraction, a covert operation that went beyond mere fraud or shadow clinics. I remember feeling a strange sense of unease, like stepping into a trap I didn't fully understand. Would you have caught this? Did it seem insignificant to you? Sometimes the smallest clues are the most telling, yet they slip through our fingers because we're blinded by the official narrative. But I knew then, something bigger was at play, something that could not be explained by greed alone. As months passed, I found myself questioning everything. Who truly controlled the shadow clinics? The doctors, the officials, or some unseen power pulling strings from behind the curtain? I discovered that Elena's work as a nurse had brought her into contact with a secret society operating within the medical system, an underground network that provided special services to a select few, elite clients who paid millions to stay hidden, to have their secrets kept safe. If this sounds like a conspiracy, I understand your skepticism. But what if I told you that such networks do exist, hidden from the public eye, protected by layers of silence? I remember meeting a former insider, someone who had been part of the operation but escaped. His words were chilling. They don't just hide people. They control lives, families, futures, entire communities. Elena was just one of many. And the more I uncovered, the more I realized Elena might have stumbled onto something she was never meant to see. Perhaps her disappearance was not voluntary. Maybe she knew too much. The files suggest she had begun to ask questions, to connect dots she wasn't supposed to see. That's when the threats started: unofficial pressure, intimidation disguised as routine warnings. Did you ever wonder, why do people stay silent, even when their loved ones are in danger? It's fear, yes, but also a web of loyalty and complicity. Elena's own sister, who had been paid off, knew more than she ever admitted. She played her part in the silence, perhaps convinced she was protecting her family. Or maybe she was just another pawn in a game she couldn't fully grasp. What looks most suspicious to you in this story? The secret clinics, the encrypted messages, the betrayal within the family, or the silence of the authorities who seem to turn a blind eye? I ask myself, how many Elenas are still out there, lost in the shadows, their stories erased before they could even begin? Then came the moment of reckoning, an internal power struggle. Rumors circulated that some of the high-ranking officials involved had begun to fear exposure. Internal factions within the operation started to fracture. That's when I saw the cracks widening. It was as if the entire house of cards was teetering, ready to collapse under its own weight. But the collapse never came smoothly. Instead, it was a series of betrayals. Informants turning against each other, evidence disappearing overnight, witnesses recanting. I remember the mounting frustration, how the truth was always just out of reach, hidden behind locked doors and sealed files. The system was protecting its own, even as it claimed to serve justice. And then, the final blow, an orchestrated leak, a carefully crafted narrative to divert attention. Official records were altered, witnesses threatened, and Elena's name was erased from all official documents. It was a purge of memory, an attempt to make her vanish entirely. I look back and wonder, was Elena still alive somewhere, living under a new identity? Or was she simply a ghost, sacrificed for the sake of some shadow operation that would never see the light of day? If this case were investigated today, how do you think it would end? Would the truth finally surface, or would it be buried again, drowned in layers of deception? I have my doubts. The more I think about it, the clearer it becomes. This wasn't just about one woman. It was about an entire system built on secrets, on silence, on betrayal. And Elena's story is just one fragment of a much larger mosaic. Why do you think this was hidden for so long? Because revealing it would threaten the powerful. Because exposing the truth would dismantle a carefully maintained illusion. That's the real danger. Truths like these are dangerous because they threaten to unravel everything we believe in. And now as I sit here, years later, I realize I've only scratched the surface. I've seen the evidence, followed the breadcrumbs, but I've come to accept that some stories are never fully told. Some secrets are too dangerous to be exposed. Elena's case is a reminder. Trust is fragile, and betrayal lurks behind the most familiar faces. If you've listened this far, you already understand. The system is not infallible. Sometimes, it's the very institutions we trust that hide the darkest truths. And the question remains, how many others like Elena are out there, living under shadows, their voices silenced forever? Would you have believed the official version if you had been in my place? Or would you have sensed the cracks in the story from the start? Think about it. Because sometimes the truth is hidden in plain sight, and it's only the brave, or the reckless, who dare to look deeper. This file was never meant to be released. Files like these rarely survive the light of day. But if you've made it this far, you're already part of the investigation. Subscribe. I'll show you the next case. These secrets don't stay buried forever. Not if I can help it. And this is only one story. There are others, more shadowed, more dangerous. The system is watching, and I've learned not to trust what I see on the surface. The real truth often hides behind layers of denial and silence. So ask yourself, what else is out there? What other secrets are waiting to be uncovered? Would you have the courage to see them? Or are you content to believe the official story? Remember, trust is fragile, betrayal is everywhere. And sometimes the greatest danger is not what we know, but what we refuse to face. This story is not finished. It's only just begun. I often think about that moment, when I first realized how deep this rabbit hole went. It was a faint, almost imperceptible anomaly in the digital trail, buried beneath layers of encryption and misdirection. An unassuming timestamp, a tiny discrepancy in the metadata. At first glance, it seemed insignificant, but I knew better. I knew it was a key. Would you have caught this? Would you have questioned the oddity in the data? It's always in the details, those small inconsistencies that betray the bigger picture. I remember pulling that file apart, line by line, as if peeling back layers of a carefully constructed lie. And what I uncovered was chilling. A network of coded references, hidden files, and clandestine links to offshore accounts. This wasn't just about shadow clinics or ghost patients, it was a web. Interconnected, encrypted, protected by layers of plausible deniability. I found a series of transactions, cryptocurrency transfers, untraceable and swift. Money moved in and out like blood through veins, silent but vital to the operation. I wondered, what was Elena's role in all this? Was she merely a nurse, or was she something more? A witness, a whistleblower, perhaps even a pawn? If you look at it from a different angle, what does it say about the people involved? They operated under code names, secret meetings, and encrypted communication. I found references to the Red Moon Protocol, a clandestine plan that seemed to coordinate the entire operation. It was a shadow government within the system, controlling, manipulating, hiding everything behind a veil of legality. And yet, Elena had stumbled onto it. I'm convinced of that. Her disappearance wasn't random. It was a calculated move to silence her, to prevent her from exposing what she knew. Did she try to go public? Did she send out signals, hope someone would listen? Or was she already captured by the time she realized the full scope? This is where doubts creep in. I wonder, did I miss something? Did I overlook a critical sign because I was too eager to fit the pieces into a narrative? That's the problem with investigations like these. Sometimes the truth is hiding in plain sight, camouflaged by official reports and false leads. I ask myself, if I had known then what I know now, would I have acted differently? The more I uncovered, the more I understood that Elena was just one piece in a larger puzzle, a puzzle that involved powerful figures, law enforcement, even politicians. Evidence pointed to a network that had been operating for years, beyond the reach of any oversight. They had built a fortress of silence, shielding themselves from scrutiny, and trust in the system, began to crumble. I questioned the internal rules, the rituals that kept everything hidden. Whistleblowers were threatened, files disappeared, and the chain of command remained unbreakable. It was a system designed to protect its own at all costs. I saw firsthand how loyalty was bought and sold in shadows, and how the truth was a commodity too dangerous to reveal. What's most suspicious to you now? The encrypted files, the missing records, the silence of the authorities, or the way Elena's case was quietly closed, as if she never existed? I've come to realize that in such operations, the real power lies in what's not seen, what's hidden in the margins, in the unspoken agreements. And then came the betrayal, by those Elena trusted most. Her closest colleagues, her family, even her own husband, they all had secrets they never wanted uncovered. I found evidence of covert meetings, coded messages exchanged in the dead of night, and the unsettling realization that Elena's disappearance was orchestrated from within her own circle. It's always the ones closest to us, isn't it? The ones we least suspect. This is where the line between trust and betrayal blurs. Elena's own sister, her confidant, had been complicit, paid off, perhaps, or coerced into silence. It's hard to accept, but in this world, loyalty is a currency that can be bought. And the consequence, families torn apart, lives shattered, secrets buried deep beneath the surface. Why do you think this was hidden for so long? Because exposing it would threaten the entire hierarchy, those who benefit from the darkness. It's easier for the system to cast victims aside, to pretend they never existed, than to confront the truth head on. That's the nature of power, protected at all costs, even if it means destroying the innocent in the process. Looking back, I realize I was fighting a losing battle. The evidence was there, yes, but the system was too well entrenched. The walls of silence were thicker than I ever imagined. Whistleblowers vanished, witnesses recanted, and some witnesses simply disappeared. I wondered, how many Elena's had already been erased, their stories silenced forever? And the final blow came quietly, an internal purge, a systematic destruction of the evidence. Files were altered, digital footprints erased, and key witnesses retracted their statements. I was left with a question that still lingers. Was Elena really gone? Or did she slip through the cracks, living somewhere in the shadows, waiting for her story to be told? If this case were investigated today, what do you think would happen? Would the truth finally come to light? Or would it be buried again beneath layers of lies? I have my doubts, because I've seen too many such stories vanish into the abyss. Files redacted, lives destroyed, memories erased. And so I ask, why do you think this was hidden for so long? Because revealing it would threaten the powerful. Because exposing the truth would dismantle a carefully constructed illusion. That's the real danger. Truths like these are dangerous because they threaten to unravel everything we believe in. This story isn't finished. It's only just beginning. I've seen enough to know that Elena's case is part of a larger pattern. Families like hers, lives like hers, all caught in a web of shadows and deception. And I wonder, how many others are still out there, hidden behind the veneer of normalcy? How many secrets are buried beneath the surface, waiting to surface when the time is right? Would you have the courage to look deeper if you knew the truth was hiding just beneath your own feet? Or would you prefer to believe the official story, comforted by the illusion that justice is served? Remember, trust is fragile, and betrayal is everywhere. Sometimes the greatest danger is not what we see, but what we refuse to see. This file was never meant to be released. Files like these, truths buried for too long, rarely survive the light of day. But if you've listened this far, you're already part of the investigation. Subscribe, I'll show you the next case. These secrets don't stay buried forever, not if I can help it. And this is only one story. There are others, more shadowed, more dangerous. The system is watching, and I've learned that the truth often hides behind layers of denial and silence. The real story is always in the details, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to see it. So I leave you with this question: what else is out there, concealed in the darkness? What stories are waiting to be uncovered? Would you have the strength to face them, or are you content to accept the version they feed you? Remember, trust is fragile, betrayal lurks in the shadows, and sometimes the greatest danger is not what we know, but what we choose to ignore. This story isn't over. Not yet.